If you've only ever seen America through movies, social media reels, or travel vlogs, you probably picture a clean, free, straightforward country with fair rules, friendly neighbors, and smooth, orderly daily life. You might imagine quiet suburbs, convenient public services, respectful communities, and a society that rewards hard work and common sense. But that polished, filtered version of the United States only exists online and on screen. The real America that tens of millions of ordinary working-class and middle-class people live in every single day is full of reversed logic, absurd double standards, ridiculous systemic rules, and tiny, maddening bizarre moments that locals have grown used to simply because they have no other choice. After living in a regular suburban neighborhood of Florida for nearly a decade, surrounded by ordinary Americans, grocery store workers, office clerks, delivery drivers, school staff, construction laborers, young renters, and family households with no wealth, no privilege, and no elite connections, I've witnessed endless true, everyday weirdness that never makes national news, never goes viral online, and never gets explained to outsiders. This is a single, continuous, one-hour conversational English voiceover story, written in one unbroken paragraph, covering the most common, strangest, and most relatable bizarre realities of average American life, paced perfectly for natural professional dubbing with relaxed tone, natural pauses, and steady storytelling flow. The very first culture shock that every new resident cannot escape is America's completely illogical obsession with ice and its strange denial of basic hot water, a small but telling habit that reveals how American daily norms often stand directly against global common sense. In every other country around the world, warm water is a free, basic public necessity. Cafes, malls, offices, schools, and public restrooms all provide free hot water for comfort, health, and daily use, especially during cold weather or when people feel sick, tired, or dehydrated. In the United States, this simple universal logic is flipped entirely. Ice water is unlimited, free, and handed out everywhere without question, while plain hot water is treated like a luxury paid service. Even on freezing winter days when temperatures drop close to freezing and locals bundle up in thick coats, scarves, and beanies to fight the bitter cold wind, you will see the exact same bizarre street scene every time. Americans cover their entire upper bodies to stay warm yet wear shorts and open slippers with exposed ankles, walking around clutching huge cups of iced coffee, iced tea, and pure ice water, sipping frigid drinks until their fingers and lips turn numb. This is not a quirky personal preference, it is an unspoken social ritual. If you ask for hot water in most American casual restaurants or chain cafes, you will be met with confusion, hesitation, and often a flat refusal. Early in my time living here, I woke up on a freezing winter morning with a bad stomachache and cold fatigue, so I walked into a well-known national coffee chain just to ask for a small cup of plain warm water, no coffee, no sugar, no cream, no extra add-ons of any kind. The barista stared at me like I had asked for something unreasonable and bizarre, double-checking my request multiple times because the store literally did not have a system for giving away free hot water. She politely explained that all hot water in the shop was strictly reserved for paid hot beverages like lattes, tea, and hot chocolate, and that there was no option to receive free warm water for health or comfort purposes. To get a cup of hot water, I would have to buy a full-price drink. That small, ordinary interaction opened my eyes to a core truth of American civilian life. Many of the country's most normal daily rules are not logical or practical. They are arbitrary, commercialized, and backwards, and this is just the beginning of the endless weirdness ordinary people tolerate daily. Moving beyond small cultural oddities, America's traffic system is one of the most unfair, double-standard-driven parts of everyday life, ruled by an unwritten, pedestrian supremacy policy that completely overrides official traffic laws and punishes careful, law-abiding drivers for other people's mistakes. On paper, American traffic codes are clear, balanced, and fair: no jaywalking, no reckless crossing, no illegal parking, no blocking traffic, equal responsibility for drivers and pedestrians. In real life, every single rule is enforced only on drivers. Pedestrians have near total immunity for any road mistake. The second a person steps onto a crosswalk, regardless of red lights, phone distractions, slow loitering, or careless sudden movement into traffic, every car must stop instantly and yield. Even if you are driving legally on a green light, at a safe speed, in the correct lane, fully following every regulation, any tiny contact with a jaywalking pedestrian results in 100% driver fault. The pedestrian faces zero fines, zero warnings, zero legal consequences, and zero accountability, no matter how reckless their actions are. I have watched this unfair judgment play out dozens of times during my morning and evening commutes. One unforgettable case happened during a rainy rush hour, when roads were slippery and visibility was low. Vehicle traffic had a solid green light, and all cars were moving steadily and legally through the intersection. A middle-aged local woman ignored the pedestrian red light, walked slowly across 6 busy lanes while staring intently at her phone, and wandered directly into the path of oncoming traffic. The nearby driver slammed on his brakes immediately, skidded slightly on the wet pavement, and stopped almost completely. The only contact was a faint brush between the car's front bumper and the hem of her pants. Not a mark, not a scratch, not an injury of any kind. Yet the woman instantly pulled out her phone to take photos and videos, called the police, and filed an official complaint accusing the driver of dangerous and reckless driving. When officers arrived, they completely ignored her illegal jaywalking and distracted walking, basing their entire ruling solely on the fact that a vehicle had touched a pedestrian. The driver was fined nearly $300, had points deducted from his license, and received a permanent traffic violation on his record, while the woman who broke multiple traffic laws walked away scot-free with no reprimand at all. This is not a rare error or unfair one-time judgment. It is the daily standard rule for every American driver. Locals quickly learn that obeying every traffic law does not protect you. You are always responsible for other people's carelessness, and you will always pay the price for a pedestrian's bad choices. Parking enforcement adds another layer of blatant, selective double standards that target new residents, foreigners, and young renters while letting long-term locals break rules with zero consequences. Every residential street, fire lane, and commercial block is covered in bright yellow no parking lines and official warning signs threatening heavy fines and towing for illegal parking. Experienced local drivers know the hidden loophole perfectly: park illegally in restricted zones as long as you stay seated in the car, and police will consistently ignore the violation. Officers drive past rows of illegally parked vehicles every single day without stopping or issuing tickets, simply because the drivers remain inside. But if a newcomer pauses for 10 seconds to drop off a passenger or grab a quick item from a store, they will almost always receive an immediate, unforgiving parking ticket. This two-tier enforcement system creates a bizarre, unfair reality. Rule breaking is allowed for people who know the unspoken local loopholes, while strict punishment waits for anyone who follows the written rules honestly. Workplace culture in ordinary American suburbs introduces an equally strange reversal of basic common-sense work ethics, where laziness is celebrated and hard work is subtly punished. Every American company posts official values of productivity, teamwork, positivity, and growth, and HR teams repeatedly preach anti-inclusion, work-life balance, and equal treatment in team meetings and training sessions. The official narrative claims everyone is equal, effort is valued, and personal growth is encouraged. The real workplace reality is completely inverted. Employees regularly show up in pajamas, slippers, and overly casual clothing, bring pets to work, scroll social media for hours on end, take unapproved long breaks, and leave early without formal permission. Managers almost never address this behavior, framing it as healthy personal freedom and modern workplace flexibility. However, employees who arrive on time, stay focused, finish tasks ahead of schedule, organize team workflows, or stay a few minutes late to complete important work are frequently pulled into private HR meetings and warned that they are creating workplace pressure, encouraging involuntary overtime, and disrupting the relaxed team atmosphere. This bizarre rule creates a stagnant, counterintuitive work environment where mediocrity is protected and ambition is viewed as problematic. My coworker Eric, a typical long-term local office staff member, perfectly embodies this strange workplace survival mindset. He has a stable salary, no financial stress, and steady job security, yet he practices extreme zero-cost hoarding of all public office resources every single day. His first morning routine is not checking tasks or replying to emails but scavenging every free supply the office provides: disposable cutlery, napkins, condiment packets, coffee supplies, tea bags, pens, sticky notes, folders, paper clips, and printer paper. He fills his desk drawers and personal storage bins with these scavenged items weekly, taking massive excess amounts home to supply his entire household for free. For nearly a decade, his family has never purchased basic daily or office consumables because he systematically collects everything from the workplace. Every coworker witnesses this behavior daily, yet nobody criticizes or stops him. In the twisted logic of local American workplace culture, his freeriding is considered clever resource management and harmless personal freedom, while dedicated hard work is seen as disruptive and stressful for the team. This warped value system slowly crushes motivation over time, forcing driven newcomers to slow down and blend into mediocrity just to avoid disciplinary conversations. The most universally resented and inescapable bizarre system in everyday American life is mandatory tipping culture, a predatory rule that forces ordinary people to pay for other people's salaries regardless of service quality or actual service received. Globally, tipping isn't optional, voluntary reward for excellent, above and beyond service. It is a thank you gesture reserved for kindness, speed, and extra effort. In the United States, tipping has mutated into a compulsory, non-negotiable hidden tax covering nearly every civilian service interaction. The root of this absurd system is corporate greed. Restaurant and service industry owners intentionally pay their staff far below the legal minimum wage, shifting their entire payroll burden directly onto ordinary customers. Regular people are forced to cover employee salaries through tips, even when the service is slow, unfriendly, rushed, or completely non-existent. The most ridiculous examples come from fully self-service environments where zero staff assistance is provided. The self-service cafeteria near my home requires customers to order digitally, pick up their own food, clean their own tables, and dispose of their own trash independently. Staff members almost never interact with customers during the entire process. Even so, the checkout screen forces mandatory tip options of 15, 18, and 20% with no zero-tip choice available. You cannot complete your transaction without selecting a tip percentage, forcing you to pay extra for absolutely no service at all. On a busy weekday, I chose the lowest 15% tip to save time, only to have a staff member who never spoke to me or helped me in any way chase me outside the building to correct my tip amount, firmly explaining that self-service orders required an 18% baseline tip and that lower tipping was disrespectful to the staff. This blatant shakedown perfectly exposes how broken American tipping culture truly is. It extends far beyond dining, applying to grocery bagging, curbside pickup, package delivery, furniture assembly, home repairs, parking attendants, and hotel housekeeping. These constant hidden micropayments drain hundreds of extra dollars from ordinary family budgets every month, with no way to opt out, negotiate, or avoid the mandatory charges. Beyond systemic rules, ordinary American neighborhoods are full of eccentric locals living extremely bizarre lifestyles that outsiders would find completely unthinkable. My next-door neighbor is a perfectly healthy, employed middle-aged man with a steady full-time job, zero debt, consistent savings, and no financial struggles whatsoever, yet he lives an extreme zero-consumption lifestyle driven purely by personal choice and obsession with avoiding commercial spending. For almost 10 years, he has refused to buy any groceries, meat, dairy, produce, or prepared meals for his family. Every single meal his wife and children eat comes entirely from discarded supermarket and restaurant food, made possible by another extremely wasteful and rigid American commercial law. United States food safety regulations mandate that all food items approaching their best-by date or remaining unsold at closing time must be forcibly removed from shelves and officially scrapped, even if the items are perfectly fresh, unspoiled, sealed, safe, and fully edible. Stores are legally banned from discounting these goods, donating them to charity, or allowing employees to take them home. The only permitted action is throwing perfectly good food into commercial dumpsters, creating massive nationwide food waste every single day. High-quality steaks, fresh seafood, organic fruits and vegetables, artisanal bread, premium desserts, and imported dairy products are discarded daily simply because of arbitrary shelf life rules. My neighbor meticulously tracks the exact closing times and disposal routines of every local grocery store and restaurant, arriving each evening in casual worn clothing to calmly collect the edible discarded food. He thoroughly cleans, sanitizes, and stores everything properly, cooks full nutritious family meals from these dumpster-collected ingredients, and even hosts small neighborhood gatherings where he proudly serves these home-cooked dishes. He never feels embarrassed or tries to hide his lifestyle. Instead, he openly explains that he is simply preventing unnecessary corporate waste and outsmarting rigid, illogical commercial regulations that destroy perfectly usable resources. Beyond food collection, he gathers every free public disposable resource available: store plastic bags, promotional flyers, free event water bottles, public restroom paper towels, and office stationery collected from his workplace. He repairs old clothing repeatedly instead of replacing it, wearing the same pairs of socks for over a decade with constant mending. What makes his story so uniquely American is that he is not poor, homeless, or struggling financially. He simply views consumer spending as unnecessary waste and zero-cost living as a personal challenge and lifestyle victory. Surprisingly, a small but widespread community of suburban Americans shares this mindset, swapping dumpster location tips, free resource hacks, and extreme thrift strategies, forming a hidden local subculture of ordinary people who reject regular commercial consumption despite having stable incomes. While eccentric neighbors are merely strange and entertaining, America's healthcare system is the most devastating, unjust, and life-altering bizarre reality facing average working citizens. The global reputation of American medical excellence only applies to elite private healthcare for the wealthy and privileged. For regular middle-class and working-class people, the healthcare system is an exploitative, inefficient, overpriced machine designed to financially ruin ordinary residents through hidden insurance traps and predatory billing practices. American adults are forced to pay expensive monthly health insurance premiums their entire lives, yet insurance policies come with extremely high annual deductibles that exclude almost all common illnesses, minor surgeries, and routine preventative treatments. Millions of ordinary people pay hundreds of dollars every month for insurance coverage they can barely use when they actually get sick. One of my closest local friends, a hardworking, tax-paying resident with a perfect decade-long record of on-time insurance payments, experienced this brutal system firsthand when he suffered a routine case of acute appendicitis in the middle of the night. In most countries, appendicitis surgery is an affordable, standard, low-risk routine procedure with minimal hospital fees and reliable insurance coverage. In America, it became a life-ruining financial disaster. He called an ambulance out of unbearable pain, received a standard minimally invasive surgery with zero complications, and spent 6 days recovering in a basic shared hospital ward with no specialized treatment or emergency interventions. Despite the completely ordinary nature of his care, his final hospital bill reached a staggering $70,000. The itemized charges were shockingly predatory and unreasonable. An 18-minute basic ambulance ride with no emergency care cost $1,500, for standard emergency diagnostic tests cost $5,500. The routine minimally invasive surgery was priced at $33,000, 6 nights in a basic shared ward cost $26,000, and simple painkillers, sterile bandages, and routine vital monitoring added another $4,500. After 10 years of faithfully paying high monthly insurance premiums without a single late payment, his insurance provider only covered $12,000 of the total bill, leaving him with $58,000 in crippling personal medical debt. The hospital offered zero hardship waivers, zero flexible installment plans, and zero financial assistance programs. Immediate full payment was required, with late penalties, credit score destruction, and legal enforcement for any unpaid balance. Overnight, a stable, debt-free, hardworking ordinary American was pushed into severe financial ruin because of a common, treatable illness. To survive, he was forced to downsize his comfortable apartment into a cramped low-cost rental, work double shifts 7 days a week, cut all basic leisure and social spending, and live in constant anxiety about debt collection and credit damage. This tragedy is not a rare exception, it is the standard healthcare experience for millions of average Americans. Minor colds, allergies, and stomach issues require booking doctor appointments weeks in advance, forcing small symptoms to worsen over time due to long waiting periods. A 2-minute generic doctor consultation with basic prescription medication regularly costs hundreds of dollars. Simple wound cleaning and bandaging costs over $1,000. Full-body routine health checkups cost thousands of dollars, putting preventative care completely out of reach for most working families. Forced by this broken system, ordinary Americans have developed a shared bizarre survival rule: endure minor illnesses at home, delay serious conditions as long as possible, and avoid hospitals entirely unless facing immediate life-threatening danger. People pay thousands of dollars annually for mandatory insurance coverage they never dare use, trapped in a cruel paradox of compulsory payment and inaccessible care. American consumer culture and social behavior foster even more daily absurdities rooted in entitlement and double standards. Local small family-owned businesses constantly face unreasonable customer demands that ignore posted rules and basic common courtesy. A neighborhood gift and decor shop near my home once ran a clearly advertised one-day grand opening discount, with printed posters, social media posts, and in-store signage displaying the exact promotion dates and terms. The day after the limited-time sale ended, a local customer entered the shop and insisted on receiving the expired opening discount. When the young shop owners politely showed the printed date restrictions and explained the promotion was no longer active, the customer threw a loud public scene, accusing the small family business of fraudulent marketing, false advertising, and customer deception. Instead of standing firm on their clear policy, the vulnerable small business owner surrendered and honored the expired discount simply to avoid malicious online reviews, public harassment, and damaging formal complaints. This unfair pattern repeats in every American neighborhood. Individual consumers feel entitled to override written rules for personal benefit, while small merchants are pressured to tolerate unreasonable demands to protect their livelihoods. Many ordinary locals also display a uniquely subjective, reality-bending mindset that prioritizes personal feelings over objective facts and common sense. I once watched an elderly neighborhood woman crouch on the community lawn holding a clearly lifeless, stiff, cold baby rodent with no visible heartbeat, movement, or breath whatsoever. Every nearby passerby could clearly see the small creature was completely deceased, yet the woman insisted softly and sincerely that it was merely tired, sleeping, and resting peacefully. She carefully placed the lifeless body in a heated pet travel carrier, booked an expensive emergency veterinary appointment, and prepared to pay for professional medical treatment to rescue the dead animal. When concerned neighbors gently tried to explain the obvious reality, she dismissed everyone as cold, uncompassionate, and insensitive to living creatures. This tendency to prioritize personal belief over undeniable fact is a common local trait, creating countless small, bizarre public interactions and social misunderstandings every single day. America's wildlife protection rules add another layer of contradictory, illogical restriction that prioritizes animal comfort over human quality of life. Urban and suburban neighborhoods are constantly overrun with raccoons, squirrels, possums, wild birds, and stray wildlife that frequently break into residential homes, steal food, tear furniture, create loud nighttime disturbances, damage personal property, and disrupt daily family life. Despite constant residential disruption and property damage, strict state wildlife laws forbid ordinary citizens from trapping, chasing, harming, or removing any wild animal, even when the creatures invade private homes and destroy personal belongings. Any resident who takes independent action to stop ongoing damage risks heavy fines, legal penalties, and official citations. The only legal solution is to schedule official government wildlife removal services, which have extremely long waiting times, often taking weeks to dispatch a technician. During the waiting period, residents have no choice but to tolerate ongoing destruction, noise, and invasion with zero legal recourse or protection. The stark, hypocritical contradiction is that while human residents are legally forced to protect disruptive wildlife, local society remains completely indifferent to violent natural predation. I have repeatedly watched crowds of local residents silently film and observe wild animals hunting and killing each other in public parks with zero intervention or compassion, accepting brutal natural cruelty while enforcing hyper-strict legal protection for individual wild animals. This inconsistent, paradoxical value system creates yet another normalized absurdity in daily American suburban life. The national price structure and labor market represent one final pervasive bizarre contradiction that shapes every ordinary person's daily financial choices. In the United States, manufactured goods like electronics, clothing, vehicles, and home appliances are relatively affordable for average working people, while basic human labor and routine home services are shockingly overpriced. Simple home repairs, electrical checks, plumbing fixes, furniture assembly, lawn care, house cleaning, and moving labor carry astronomical service fees that often exceed the cost of the physical goods themselves. A basic household maintenance visit carries a mandatory $300 starting service fee, with additional charges for every small adjustment or minor repair. What makes this system even more frustrating is the consistent pattern of extremely high prices paired with low quality, rushed, unreliable work. Expensive professional repairs often fail shortly after completion, with no reliable refund policy, free reservice guarantee, or effective customer complaint process. Faced with this broken labor market, ordinary Americans are forced into universal self-reliance. The average local adult learns basic plumbing, electrical troubleshooting, appliance repair, furniture building, car maintenance, and home renovation skills purely out of financial necessity. The popular American DIY lifestyle is not a fun hobby for most people. It is a mandatory survival strategy to avoid being overcharged for substandard professional labor. Even residential rental rules enforce unfair double standards that burden ordinary working-class renters. Standard American rental agreements impose extremely strict, zero-tolerance rules on tenants. Rent must be paid perfectly on time every month, no minor wall scuffs or floor wear is allowed upon move-out, quiet hours are strictly enforced, unapproved pets and guests are forbidden, and any small lease violation results in heavy fines or full security deposit forfeiture with no appeal process. Landlords, by contrast, retain nearly unlimited authority with almost zero accountability. They can raise rent arbitrarily without warning or justification, enter rental units unannounced for inspections, delay critical repairs indefinitely, and ignore unsafe living conditions with zero legal consequences. Rental platforms and local housing authorities consistently side with property owners, leaving ordinary young renters powerless against unfair treatment, yearly rent hikes, and unjust deposit deductions. After nearly a decade of observing these endless overlapping systemic absurdities in suburban American civilian life, I have come to understand that none of these strange daily occurrences are random accidents or individual personality quirks. They are normalized, systemic contradictions built deeply into the structure of ordinary American society. Workplace systems reward laziness and penalize ambition, consumer culture enforces involuntary overpayment through mandatory tipping, traffic laws prioritize pedestrian recklessness over driver fairness, healthcare systems profit from ordinary people's medical misfortune, wildlife rules prioritize animal comfort over human quality of life, labor pricing punishes ordinary people for seeking Professional help and housing rules consistently favor property owners over working-class renters. Local Americans grow up immersed in these inconsistent, illogical systems from childhood, gradually becoming desensitized to the constant weirdness, complaining privately about unfair rules while continuing to adapt and comply out of necessity. To outside observers, these daily oddities seem hilarious, ridiculous, and unbelievable. To ordinary Americans living them every single day, they are simply the unremarkable, unchangeable background of normal civilian life. This full continuous one-hour narrative captures the true, unfiltered, bizarre everyday experience of average Americans, completely free of media glamour, political bias, and exaggerated drama, presenting only the quiet, constant, systemic weirdness that shapes suburban civilian life across the entire United States. If you grow up living average, middle-class suburban life in the United States, outsiders often assume your days are monotonous, predictable, even boring, an endless loop of commute, grocery runs, neighborhood walks, and trivial small-town routines with zero drama, zero surprises, and absolutely nothing out of the ordinary ever happening to you or the people around you. Movies, social media, and mainstream storytelling always fixate on extreme American stories, big city crime, celebrity scandals, dramatic natural disasters, wild college parties, and high-stakes career chaos, completely ignoring the real, unfiltered, endlessly bizarre truth that defines everyday life for tens of millions of regular, ordinary Americans. The most insane, hilarious, absurd, and unforgettable moments in American life do not happen on movie sets or in viral internet clips. They happen quietly, randomly, and unapologetically in the boring, tree-lined suburban neighborhoods, strip mall parking lots, local post offices, neighborhood grocery stores, and quiet residential cul-de-sacs where normal people live their mundane, routine-driven lives every single day. I am a completely ordinary 30-year-old American suburban resident, working a standard remote administrative support job, renting a modest 3-bedroom house in a quiet Illinois subdivision where every lawn is neatly mowed, every house has nearly identical siding, every neighbor waves politely when you pass them on the street, and the biggest weekly planned community event is the Sunday morning farmers market and the monthly neighborhood HOA meeting that almost no one voluntarily attends. Before I started paying close attention to the world around me, I genuinely believed my life was dull, uneventful, and perfectly normal, that weird and chaotic things only happened to other people, and that my days would always blend together into one indistinguishable routine after another. But over the course of one single calendar year, I documented dozens of unbelievably strange, ridiculously funny, utterly illogical incidents that happened purely by living my regular everyday life, interacting with regular everyday neighbors, shopping at regular everyday local businesses, and participating in regular everyday American suburban rituals. None of these events were staged, none were exaggerated, none were fictionalized for entertainment. Every single bizarre moment in this story is 100% authentic, unedited, and typical of the quiet, hidden chaos that simmers just beneath the surface of so-called normal American suburban life, the kind of relatable, absurd, human chaos that professional storytellers never capture but every average American has experienced in some form or another. This entire story is one continuous narrative, stitched together from 12 months of tiny, spiraling, ridiculous everyday disasters and weird neighbor encounters, perfectly paced for 1 hour of natural, conversational English voiceover, written in smooth, readable, spoken word style that avoids complex sentence structures, heavy jargon, or abrupt tonal shifts, designed specifically for clean, enjoyable professional with natural pauses and steady rhythm. It all started in January on a frigid, gray Midwest winter morning, the kind of bone-chilling Illinois day where the air stings your cheeks the second you step outside, the ground is frozen solid with patches of slippery black ice, and every sensible person stays bundled up indoors as much as possible to avoid the brutal winter wind. I woke up at 7 a.m. on a Tuesday like I did every workday, rolled out of bed, made a pot of basic black coffee, pulled on my thick winter parka, gloves, and beanie, and headed out to my driveway to brush the thick layer of frost off my car windshield before logging into my remote work shift at 8 a.m. My routine was mind-numbingly standard, the definition of adult suburban normalcy: wake up, prep coffee, defrost car, work 8 hours from my home desk, cook a simple dinner, watch a couple episodes of a casual streaming show, and go to bed, repeating the same cycle day after day with zero variation. I expected nothing out of the ordinary on this freezing January morning, but suburban America thrives on breaking routine in the most petty, ridiculous ways imaginable, and my first weird encounter of the year was waiting for me the second I stepped foot on my icy driveway. Directly in the center of my perfectly cleared, freshly shoveled driveway, sitting completely upright and entirely unharmed on the frozen asphalt, was a single, full-sized bright orange construction traffic cone. There were no road construction projects within 5 miles of my neighborhood, no street repairs, no utility work, no city crews operating anywhere nearby that morning. The streets were silent, empty, and frozen, with zero construction activity of any kind. The cone was pristine, no scratches, no dirt, no snow buildup, like it had been brand new and deliberately placed there minutes before I stepped outside. I stood there confused, sipping my steaming coffee, staring at a random traffic cone occupying the middle of my private residential driveway, wondering who on earth would take the time to carry a heavy construction cone miles from any work zone, trudge through freezing winter weather, and place it perfectly centered on my personal property for absolutely no logical reason. I scanned the surrounding neighborhood, every neighboring driveway empty, every front yard quiet, no pedestrians, no passing cars, no witnesses whatsoever. I walked over and picked up the cone. It was heavy, solid plastic, the exact type used for highway and road construction, not a tiny decorative novelty cone, far too large and heavy for a random prank by a local kid. I hauled it to the edge of my yard and set it by the sidewalk, assuming it was a one-off weird prank or a bizarre misplaced item that would never happen again, brushed off the incident, and went back to defrosting my car, still chuckling at the random absurdity of starting my day with a mysterious driveway traffic cone. I finished prepping my car, headed inside to start work, and forgot about the cone entirely until I stepped outside for my lunch break an hour later, only to freeze in disbelief once more. The traffic cone was back. It had been moved from the sidewalk edge, carried back across my lawn, and placed once again perfectly centered in my driveway, exactly where I'd found it that morning. This time, I was determined to figure out who was behind the bizarre cone mischief, so I spent my entire lunch break standing quietly by my front window, peering out through the blinds to monitor my driveway, waiting for whoever was moving the cone to reveal themselves. After 40 minutes of patient watching, I finally spotted movement from the house 2 doors down, a quiet elderly man named Mr. Gerald Voss, an 82-year-old retired road construction worker who rarely spoke to anyone in the neighborhood, kept entirely to himself, and spent most of his days pacing slowly up and down the residential streets in his winter coat. I'd lived in the neighborhood for 3 years and had never exchanged more than a quick wave with him, never guessed he harbored such a bizarre, specific personal mission. That day, I learned Mr. Voss had spent every single winter morning for the past decade patrolling the neighborhood streets, collecting stray construction cones that fell off city work trucks miles away, and placing them on the driveways of houses he deemed insufficiently visible to passing traffic. In his retired construction worker mind, residential driveways were dangerous blind spots for delivery drivers, mail trucks, and passing cars, and stray traffic cones were his personal community safety tool to mark every driveway in the subdivision as a potential traffic hazard. He did not see it as a prank, did not mean any harm, and was entirely convinced he was performing vital, uncompensated public safety work for the neighborhood, one random driveway cone placement at a time. He'd been placing cones on my driveway for months. I'd just never noticed before because I'd always rushed inside too quickly to spot them, and he'd replaced it during my work break because he'd seen me move it and assumed I'd removed a critical safety marker out of ignorance. Instead of getting frustrated or annoyed by the bizarre daily cone invasion, I walked over to his house that afternoon, introduced myself politely, and listened patiently as he spent 20 minutes passionately explaining his entire neighborhood safety mission, pulling out old photos of his decades-long construction career, explaining every traffic safety rule he'd memorized over 40 years on the job, and earnestly telling me he refused to let our quiet suburban neighborhood fall victim to preventable driveway accidents. By the end of our conversation, I couldn't bring myself to tell him to stop, so I made a gentle compromise. I told him I greatly appreciated his dedication to neighborhood safety, and I would leave one permanent cone at the edge of my yard year-round for visibility, so he no longer needed to carry new cones to my driveway every morning. He lit up with pride, shook my hand firmly, and thanked me for understanding his important community work, and from that day forward, my front yard has permanently featured a single orange traffic cone, a quiet tribute to one retired man's extremely specific, slightly bizarre, deeply heartfelt commitment to suburban road safety. That tiny, weird interaction set the tone for my entire year. Normal suburban life is just thousands of ordinary people carrying out extremely personal, deeply serious, utterly bizarre self-appointed missions that no one else understands, turning mundane neighborhoods into endless hotspots of gentle, harmless human chaos. Just 1 week after the traffic cone incident, I encountered my next slice of suburban absurdity at our local neighborhood grocery store, a small, family-owned market that every resident in the subdivision shops at daily, a store so familiar I could walk the aisles blindfolded. I stopped by after work on a snowy Wednesday evening to grab bread, eggs, and milk, my standard quick weekly grocery run, expecting a fast, uneventful 5-minute trip. The store was quiet, only a handful of shoppers browsing the aisles, soft overhead music playing, cashiers working slowly through the end-of-day rush, completely typical for a winter weekday evening. I grabbed my 3 staple items and headed toward the single self-checkout station to scan and pay quickly, but I was stopped short by a middle-aged woman standing directly in front of the self-checkout machine, blocking the entire kiosk entirely, standing perfectly still with her arms crossed, staring intently at the self-checkout screen with the most serious, focused expression I had ever seen on a grocery store customer. I waited politely for 30 seconds, assuming she was finishing up her transaction or troubleshooting a scanner error, but she never moved, never tapped the screen, never scanned a single item, just stood frozen in place, guarding the self-checkout like it was a priceless museum artifact. Curious and confused, I gently asked if she was finished with the kiosk, and she turned to me with a completely earnest, dead serious face and explained that she was standing guard against self-checkout algorithm discrimination. She went on to explain her months-long personal research project, claiming that local grocery store self-checkout systems were programmed to unfairly flag middle-aged women for accidental scanning errors far more often than younger shoppers or male customers, creating a systemic bias in automated retail technology that no one else was investigating or addressing. She told me she visited this exact grocery store every single evening after dinner to stand guard at the self-checkout for 1 full hour, monitoring every transaction, logging every error alert, and compiling a detailed handwritten data log of alleged algorithm bias to submit to the store owners and eventually to a consumer protection advocacy group. She carried a thick spiral notebook full of handwritten transaction logs, timestamped error reports, and shopper demographic notes, all dedicated to proving her theory that self-checkout machines were subtly discriminatory against middle-aged female shoppers. For the next 20 minutes, every customer who tried to use the self-checkout had to wait while she carefully observed their entire transaction, scribbling frantic notes in her notebook, muttering about corporate retail bias, and pointing out every minor scanner glitch as further proof of her theory. The store employees were completely used to her daily presence, laughing quietly behind the registers and telling me she'd been doing this every night for 6 months straight, a permanent, harmless fixture of the store's evening routine. No one had the heart to ask her to leave, because she was always polite, never disruptive, and genuinely believed she was conducting important consumer advocacy work for the entire community. I stood there waiting for my turn, watching this ordinary suburban woman dedicate hours of her free time to investigating grocery store machine bias, and once again realized how every quiet neighborhood is filled with regular people with wildly passionate, hyper-specific, completely unpublicized personal causes that shape their entire daily routine. These are not crazy people, they are ordinary, intelligent, functional American adults who simply fixate on tiny, overlooked aspects of everyday life that no one else notices, turning trivial suburban minutiae into life-defining missions. 2 weeks later, the neighborhood chaos shifted from human quirk to animal absurdity, a classic suburban American phenomenon that every homeowner dreads but cannot escape, rogue urban wildlife with extremely bold personalities and zero fear of humans. Our subdivision is lined with mature oak and maple trees, home to dozens of squirrels, rabbits, raccoons, and songbirds, all typical Midwest suburban wildlife. But one particular squirrel quickly became the neighborhood's most infamous local celebrity, earning the official nickname Bandit from every resident who crossed its path. Bandit was a small, fluffy gray squirrel with a distinctive white stripe across its face, and it had developed an extremely specific, bizarre daily routine, every single morning at exactly 9:15 a.m. It would climb onto the wooden fence separating my backyard from my neighbor's yard, sit perfectly upright, and wait patiently for one of us to step outside, then loudly chatter and flick its tail until we placed a small handful of unsalted peanuts on the fence post for it to eat. At first, we thought it was a random coincidence, a squirrel that had learned to associate human yards with food, but it quickly became clear Bandit was running a strict daily schedule, far more disciplined than most human neighbors. If I stepped outside late, Bandit would chatter loudly and impatiently, as if scolding me for breaking our daily routine. If my neighbor forgot to leave peanuts one morning, Bandit would scamper up their back porch, tap rapidly on their sliding glass door with its tiny paws, and refuse to leave until someone acknowledged its presence. What made Bandit's story even more bizarre and uniquely suburban was how the entire neighborhood quickly organized around this one demanding squirrel. Within a month, every household on our block kept a jar of unsalted backyard peanuts on their porch. We created a casual neighborhood peanut schedule to ensure Bandit never missed its daily meal, and local kids made tiny wooden feeding platforms to mount on the fence specifically for Bandit's daily breakfast. We even started a private neighborhood Facebook group dedicated entirely to posting daily Bandit updates, photos of its dramatic door-tapping antics, and discussions about its favorite peanut varieties. The absurdity of a full block of responsible, busy American adults structuring their morning routines around the strict schedule of a petty, demanding neighborhood squirrel never escaped me, but it also perfectly encapsulated the gentle, ridiculous charm of suburban American life, when ordinary people live quiet, routine-heavy lives, small, silly, Consistent joys and tiny local legends become the highlight of everyone's day. As spring rolled around in March and April, the snow melted, the grass turned green, flowers started blooming, and suburban neighborhood activity exploded, bringing with it a whole new wave of bizarre everyday incidents rooted in the most American institution of all, the HOA, or Homeowners Association, the governing body of suburban residential life that turns trivial aesthetic preferences into official community rules and dramatic neighborhood debates. Our neighborhood HOA is notoriously strict about lawn maintenance, exterior home decor, and yard uniformity, enforcing extremely specific rules about grass height, flower bed placement, outdoor lighting, and even the color of outdoor patio furniture, rules that most residents find overly petty and ridiculous but follow to avoid small monthly fines. The most absurd HOA drama of the year unfolded completely unexpectedly over a single potted sunflower plant, a tiny, innocent flower that spiraled into a month-long neighborhood controversy that consumed multiple HOA meetings, dozens of resident text threads, and hours of volunteer committee time. It all started when my next-door neighbor, a sweet, quiet single mom named Clara, planted a single tall sunflower in a small pot on her front porch, just one simple flower she'd grown from a seed with her 7-year-old daughter for a school science project. The sunflower grew tall, bright, and beautiful, adding a tiny pop of cheerful yellow to her neutral front porch decor, completely harmless, entirely lovely, and invisible to most passers-by. But one overly dedicated HOA architectural committee member, a retired accountant who prided himself on strict rule enforcement and perfect neighborhood uniformity, filed an official HOA violation notice against Clara, claiming the single-potted sunflower violated the neighborhood's uniform exterior foliage policy, which stated all front porch potted plants must be low-growing, perennial, and neutral-toned to maintain visual neighborhood consistency. Sunflowers are tall, seasonal, and brightly colored, therefore officially non-compliant per the fine print of the HOA rulebook that no resident had ever actually read in full. What followed was a month of the most unnecessarily dramatic, bureaucratic, absurd suburban conflict I had ever witnessed. Clara refused to remove the sunflower, explaining it was her daughter's school project and held sentimental value, not just decorative foliage. The HOA refused to dismiss the violation, citing official written policy and threatening a $20 daily fine if the flower remained on the porch. The entire neighborhood split into two passionate factions, the strict rule-following residents who argued uniform neighborhood aesthetics preserved property values, and the sunflower supporters who argued punishing a child's school project over a single flower was absurdly petty and authoritarian. Neighbors posted passionate defenses of the sunflower in the community group, organized casual porch support gatherings, printed tiny sunflower stickers to display on car windows and mailboxes, and turned one tiny potted flower into a full-blown neighborhood civil rights movement for suburban aesthetic freedom. Local kids drew sunflower artwork and taped it to Clara's front door. Local retired teachers wrote formal letters to the HOA board defending educational plant projects, and even local small businesses started displaying sunflowers in their shop windows to show solidarity with the sunflower rebellion. After 4 weeks of intense community debate, 3 formal HOA committee meetings, dozens of resident emails, and multiple rulebook reviews, the HOA board finally voted unanimously to amend the neighborhood foliage policy to create a new official exemption for educational youth-grown seasonal plants, officially legalizing porch sunflowers and all other student-grown garden projects in our subdivision. The entire month-long drama started and ended over one single, tiny, harmless flower grown by a 7-year-old child, and it perfectly illustrates the core absurdity of modern American suburban life. We live in safe, comfortable, low-conflict communities where the biggest, most passionate, most divisive drama entire neighborhoods face revolves around trivial aesthetic rules and single-potted flowers, because our lives are otherwise so stable and uneventful that small things become deeply meaningful and highly contested. As summer arrived, the warm weather unlocked an entirely new category of everyday American weirdness: suburban summer errands, public pool chaos, neighborhood garage sales, and the uniquely bizarre interactions that happen at small-town suburban strip malls on hot, lazy summer afternoons. Garage sale season is a sacred American suburban tradition, every weekend from May to August, bringing dozens of neighborhood families out to sell old furniture, used toys, random household knickknacks, and vintage junk from their driveways, a casual weekend ritual that blends community connection, bargain hunting, and pure unfiltered human weirdness. I spent one Saturday morning in June browsing local neighborhood garage sales, a casual weekend hobby I enjoy on slow summer mornings, and stumbled upon the most bizarre, heartfelt, utterly inexplicable garage sale collection I had ever encountered in my life. An older couple in their 70s was hosting a standard neighborhood garage sale on their quiet cul-de-sac, displaying typical items: old kitchenware, children's books, used lawn tools, vintage picture frames, and worn holiday decor, but tucked in the very center of their sale table was a perfectly organized, meticulously cataloged collection of hundreds of lost and found single socks, all cleaned, folded, sorted by size, color, and fabric type, displayed neatly in labeled baskets with handwritten price tags. Each single sock had a tiny handwritten note attached detailing the exact date and exact neighborhood location where it had been found, ranging from local park benches, grocery store parking lots, school playgrounds, and neighborhood sidewalks spanning the past 15 years. The couple explained they had made it their life's quiet summer mission to collect every single lost lone sock in the entire subdivision, clean and restore them, and sell them for 25 cents each in the hope that original owners would recognize their missing socks and reunite them with their pairs. They told me they had collected over 1,200 single socks in 15 years, reunited nearly 400 socks with their owners, and donated all unsold socks to local homeless shelters at the end of every summer garage sale season. What made the moment so uniquely beautiful and bizarre was how ordinary and unassuming this mission was. Two retired suburban residents spending their free time rescuing society's most forgotten, trivial discarded items, devoting years of their lives to a tiny, meaningless, wonderful cause that no one else would ever notice or care about. Standing there staring at baskets full of carefully preserved lost socks on a hot summer morning, surrounded by the quiet hum of suburban garage sale chatter, I realized that nearly every single kind, quirky, ordinary American adult has a secret tiny passion project, a small personal mission that makes their quiet suburban life feel meaningful and purposeful, even if the rest of the world would view it as completely pointless or absurd. That same summer, I experienced the most relatable, ridiculously funny everyday American bureaucratic chaos at our local municipal public pool, a standard small-town public swimming pool that serves every neighborhood family in the area during summer break. Public pools in suburban America are universal hubs of chaotic, unregulated summer fun, filled with noisy kids, exhausted parents, lifeguards enforcing overly strict rules, and random bizarre public interactions you could never anticipate. I visited the pool on a busy July afternoon to cool off from the 90-degree heat, arriving with my swim bag, ready for a relaxing hour of floating in the shallow end. Within 10 minutes of arriving, the entire pool area was thrown into mild, ridiculous chaos over a single misunderstood pool rule regarding inflatable pool toys. The local pool's official written policy stated, "No large floating devices allowed in main pool," a standard rule designed to prevent overcrowding and safety hazards from giant inflatable rafts. On this particular afternoon, a father had brought a tiny, palm-sized inflatable rubber duck for his 3-year-old toddler to play with in the shallow kiddie pool area, a miniature toy smaller than a person's fist, completely harmless, incapable of blocking pool space or creating any safety risk whatsoever. Despite the toy's tiny size, the on-duty teenage lifeguard, adhering strictly to the exact letter of the written rule with zero room for interpretation, informed the father the miniature rubber duck qualified as a floating device and was officially banned from the pool premises. What followed was a 20-minute polite but intense debate between a rule-strict teen lifeguard, a confused and amused father, and a growing crowd of watching parents, all debating whether a 1-inch rubber duck counted as a regulated floating device per municipal pool code. The lifeguard refused to bend the official written policy, stating he could lose his job for violating pool rules regardless of how small the toy was, while the father gently argued that enforcing a ban on a tiny toddler toy was the epitome of pointless bureaucratic overreach. Eventually, the pool manager was called over to make a final ruling, and after reading the exact rule wording verbatim and consulting the official municipal pool handbook, the manager officially declared the miniature rubber duck a banned floating device, forcing the father to store the tiny toy in his car for the remainder of their pool visit. Every parent watching the scene laughed in disbelief at the sheer absurdity of strict, unyielding rules overriding common sense, a classic American everyday experience we've all encountered in schools, public facilities, government offices, and retail spaces, rigid policy enforcement that ignores basic human logic and common decency for the sake of following written rules exactly as they are printed. This small, silly pool incident perfectly encapsulates the quiet frustration and endless absurdity of ordinary American daily life. We live in a country governed by thousands of hyper-specific, inflexible rules written for broad scenarios that are constantly applied to tiny, unique, harmless individual situations, creating unnecessary conflict and ridiculous drama out of absolutely nothing at all. As fall arrived and summer faded into cool autumn weather, the neighborhood shifted back to quiet routine, school resumed for local kids, lawns turned brown, trees shed their leaves, and I encountered two more perfectly bizarre, perfectly ordinary suburban incidents that capped off my year of hidden everyday chaos. The first occurred at our neighborhood's annual fall block party, a casual low-key community gathering every October where neighbors set up food tables, host kid games, share homemade baked goods, and socialize with people they live beside but rarely talk to throughout the year. The block party is always relaxed, friendly, and uneventful, full of casual small talk and harmless community fun. But this year's party featured an unexpected bizarre contest invented entirely on the spot by a group of retired neighborhood men, a casual, leaf blower precision competition. What started as a silly joke between two neighbors quickly escalated into an official impromptu neighborhood tournament, with handmade rules, official judges, scorecards, and competing contestants ranging in age from 22 to 81 years old. The contestants competed in 3 absurd precision categories: fastest leaf pile gathering, most accurate leaf targeting into a small bucket from 10 feet away, and gentlest leaf blower breeze capable of lifting a single leaf without disturbing a paper cup placed directly beside it. Neighbors gathered around to cheer, take photos, score each round, and debate tournament rules with intense competitive seriousness, turning a casual fall block party into a full-blown suburban athletic competition centered entirely on ordinary household lawn equipment. The sheer ridiculousness of ordinary suburban adults turning basic yard maintenance tools into a serious competitive sport perfectly sums up small-town American leisure culture. When life is safe, stable, and routine-driven, people create their own fun, their own competitions, and their own local traditions out of the most mundane household items imaginable. The final bizarre incident of the year happened on a quiet, ordinary November evening, late at night, when I experienced the most harmless, confusing, utterly charming suburban mystery of the entire 12 months. I was up late working at my desk around 11 p.m., my front window facing the quiet, empty residential street outside, when I noticed a soft, warm glow flickering in the front yard of the house directly across the street. Curious, I peered out the window to investigate, and saw an elderly woman standing alone in her dark front yard, holding a small battery-powered candle lantern, slowly and carefully illuminating every single fallen leaf scattered across her lawn one by one, moving methodically from one end of her yard to the other in the quiet midnight darkness. She spent nearly an hour wandering her front yard alone in the cold night air, lighting tiny lantern glows over every patch of leaves, never raking them, never cleaning her yard, simply shining gentle light on every fallen autumn leaf on her property. The next morning, I casually asked her about the strange midnight leaf lighting ritual when I saw her getting her mailbox mail, and she smiled softly and explained her quiet annual tradition. Every fall for the past 20 years, on the night before she rakes her autumn leaves, she walks her yard by lantern light to honor the leaves that have shaded her home all summer, thank the trees for their seasonal beauty, and pause to appreciate the small, fleeting beauty of autumn before cleaning up her yard for winter. It was not a prank, not a mental health quirk, not a strange public stunt. It was simply a quiet, private, deeply meaningful personal ritual created by an ordinary American woman to find beauty and gratitude in the most mundane, overlooked seasonal chore of suburban life. Standing there listening to her explain her gentle midnight leaf ceremony, I finally understood the entire point of every single bizarre, silly, wonderful incident I documented all year long. People who live ordinary, stable, quiet, uneventful American suburban lives are never truly boring or unremarkable. We all fill our routine-driven days with tiny personal missions, private rituals, passionate petty causes, weird harmless hobbies, quiet acts of kindness, and unique ways of finding meaning in the mundane. Every single strange incident that happened to me that year was not chaos for chaos' sake. It was regular, everyday American people being human, passionate about small things, creative with free time, kind to their communities, quirky in their personal habits, and deeply committed to their own quiet versions of purpose and joy. The traffic cone safety guard, the self-checkout algorithm detective, the demanding neighborhood squirrel, the sunflower rebellion, the lost sock archivists, the rubber duck pool drama, the leaf blower competitors, and the midnight leaf lantern lady are not outliers in American life. They are the norm. They are the real, unfiltered, unsung face of ordinary American society, the millions of regular people whose weird, wonderful, harmless daily quirks and personal missions make suburban America such a uniquely charming, endlessly surprising place to live. Popular media spends billions of dollars portraying American life as dramatic, dangerous, fast-paced, and extreme, but the true heart of this country lies in these quiet, absurd, gentle everyday moments: neighbors debating flower rules, retirees protecting driveways with traffic cones, strangers rescuing lost socks, families fighting for tiny toddler toys, and elderly women lighting up leaves in the midnight dark to honor seasonal beauty. After living through an entire year of these small, bizarre, perfect everyday moments, I no longer view my ordinary suburban life as boring or routine. I now see every quiet neighborhood street, every mundane errand, every casual neighbor interaction as a potential source of gentle chaos, quiet wonder, and human creativity. Normal American life is not dull. It is endlessly, beautifully, hilariously bizarre, filled with millions of tiny unscripted stories happening every single day to ordinary people just trying to live kind, consistent, meaningful lives in the quiet suburbs and small towns that make up most of America. This single continuous story captures that hidden suburban magic perfectly, the unpolished, authentic, relatable weirdness that defines everyday life for average Americans, the kind of quiet chaos that never makes the news but makes ordinary life infinitely richer, funnier, and more human than any scripted drama could ever be. Most people around the world grow up consuming a heavily curated version of American life through Hollywood movies, streaming TV shows, travel vlogs, and polished social media content that paints this country as a land of order, freedom, fairness, and straightforward everyday normalcy. Outsiders imagine clean, quiet suburbs, polite, respectful neighbors, logical public rules, convenient public services, and a balanced society that rewards hard work and common sense. But this glamorous, filtered image collapses completely once you settle down as an ordinary resident, live paycheck to paycheck among regular working-class and middle-class Americans, and experience the unglamorous, unfiltered, often illogical daily reality that tens of millions of average locals endure year after year. Having lived in a typical mixed suburban neighborhood outside Atlanta, Georgia, for nearly a decade, surrounded entirely by everyday Americans, grocery store clerks, office administrative staff, delivery drivers, construction workers, public school teachers, part-time retail workers, young renters, and ordinary family parents with no wealth, status, or elite privilege, I have accumulated countless true, repetitive, and shockingly bizarre real-life stories that never make mainstream news or viral social media feeds. What I am about to share is one single unbroken paragraph narrative, professionally paced for exactly 1 hour of natural conversational English voiceover, focusing solely on the weird, counterintuitive, and often frustrating everyday absurdities that define normal American civilian life. No exaggeration, no political bias, no sensational drama, only real routine experiences that locals have slowly learned to tolerate and normalize despite how ridiculous they seem to outsiders. The very first and most universal culture shock every new resident faces in the United States is the utterly backwards national attitude toward hot and cold water, a tiny mundane detail that perfectly symbolizes how American daily norms frequently reject basic global common sense. In every other populated region on Earth, warm plain water is considered a fundamental free public comfort, available without charge in restaurants, malls, offices, schools, gyms, and public restrooms, especially for anyone feeling unwell, tired, or cold. In America, this universal logic is completely reversed. Ice water is infinitely free, universally accessible, and automatically served everywhere you go, while simple plain hot water is treated as a premium paid luxury item that businesses refuse to provide for free under any circumstance. This bizarre cultural habit transcends weather and season. Even on freezing winter days when temperatures drop near freezing and locals bundle themselves head to toe in thick puffer coats, fuzzy scarves, and warm beanies to fight biting wind chills, you will witness the exact same confusing street scene everywhere. Americans fully bundled for winter warmth on their torsos while wearing shorts, open slippers, and exposed ankles, walking around sipping giant frosty cups of iced coffee, iced tea, and pure ice water, their fingers stiff and lips faintly blue from the cold yet acting completely unfazed. This is not a random personal preference, it is an unspoken collective social ritual that people follow subconsciously to fit in with standard American daily behavior. Early during my first winter in Georgia, I woke up with a severe stomachache and cold exhaustion, hoping to soothe my body with a simple cup of warm plain water, so I walked into a major national chain coffee shop with the sole request for hot water with no additives, no coffee, no sugar, no cream, nothing extra at all. The barista stared at me with genuine confusion, double-checking my request multiple times because the store's entire service system was built around paid beverages, with no protocol for free hot water whatsoever. She politely explained that all hot water heaters in the store were exclusively reserved for preparing menu items customers paid for, and that free hot water for personal comfort was not an approved customer service. If I wanted warm water, I had no choice but to purchase a full-priced hot drink. That small ordinary interaction opened my eyes to a core truth of ordinary American life. Many of the country's most normalized daily rules are not practical or logical, they are arbitrary, commercially driven, and deliberately backwards, and this is merely the first layer of endless systemic weirdness regular people deal with every single day. Moving past small cultural oddities, America's traffic system stands as one of the most unfair, double-standard heavy structures in ordinary civilian life, governed by an unwritten, pedestrian supremacy rule that completely overrides official traffic laws and forces law-abiding drivers to pay the price for reckless pedestrian behavior. On paper, American traffic codes appear balanced and fair for everyone. No jaywalking, no distracted walking in roadways, no illegal parking, no blocking traffic, equal responsibility for drivers and pedestrians. In real street practice, every single rule is enforced strictly on drivers while pedestrians operate with near total legal immunity. The moment a pedestrian steps onto any crosswalk, regardless of red lights, phone distraction, slow loitering, or sudden careless movement into active traffic, every vehicle must stop unconditionally and yield. Even if you are driving perfectly legally with a green light, at a safe regulated speed, within the correct lane, fully obeying every traffic statute, any minor physical contact with a jaywalking pedestrian results in automatic 100% driver fault. The pedestrian faces 0 fines, 0 warnings, 0 legal penalties, and 0 accountability, no matter how negligent their actions are. Over years of daily commuting, I have witnessed dozens of these absurd one-sided judgments. One vivid memorable incident occurred during a rainy morning rush hour with slippery roads and reduced visibility. Vehicle traffic held a solid green light, and all cars progressed steadily and legally through the intersection. A middle-aged local woman blatantly ignored the pedestrian red light, wandered slowly across 6 busy traffic lanes while fully absorbed in her phone screen, and drifted directly into the path of oncoming traffic. The nearby driver reacted instantly, slamming on his brakes and skidding slightly on the wet pavement before coming to a complete stop. The only contact between car and pedestrian was an extremely light brush against the hem of her pants, leaving no marks, no damage, and no injury whatsoever. Nevertheless, the woman immediately pulled out her phone to photograph and video the scene, called local police, and filed an official complaint accusing the driver of dangerous reckless driving. When officers arrived, they completely disregarded her illegal jaywalking and distracted walking, basing their entire ruling solely on the technical fact that a vehicle had made contact with a pedestrian. The driver was fined nearly $300, had valuable points deducted from his driving record, and received a permanent traffic violation on his license, while the law-breaking pedestrian walked away without a single word of reprimand. This is not a rare miscarriage of justice, it is the standard daily operating procedure for American traffic enforcement. Local drivers learn early that strict obedience to traffic laws offers no real protection, and they must drive in constant fear of other people's carelessness, always ready to sacrifice their own time, money, and driving record for someone else's mistake. Parking enforcement amplifies this systemic unfairness with blatant selective double standards targeting new residents and outsiders while shielding long-term locals from consequences. Every residential street, fire lane, school zone, and commercial block is covered in bright yellow no parking lines and official warning signs threatening heavy fines and towing for illegal parking. Experienced local drivers master the unspoken loophole instantly: park illegally in restricted zones as long as you remain seated inside the vehicle, and police will consistently overlook the violation. Officers routinely drive past rows of illegally parked cars without stopping, ticketing, or investigation, simply because the driver stays behind the wheel. Yet if a newcomer, tourist, student, or young renter pauses for 10 seconds to drop off a passenger or grab a quick item from a store, they will receive an immediate, unforgiving parking ticket with 0 leniency or explanation. This two-tier enforcement system creates a bizarre, unfair reality where rule-breaking is normalized for insiders while strict punishment awaits honest people who follow written rules literally. Workplace culture in ordinary American suburban offices introduces another jarring reversal of basic common-sense work ethics, where laziness and mediocrity are systemically protected while diligence and ambition are subtly penalized. Every American company displays official core values celebrating productivity, teamwork, growth, and positivity, and HR departments repeatedly deliver speeches about workplace balance, anti-inclusion policies, and equal opportunity for all employees. The official narrative claims hard work is valued, dedication is rewarded, and personal improvement is encouraged. The real on-the-job reality is completely inverted. Employees regularly arrive at work in pajamas, fuzzy slippers, and overly casual loungewear, bring personal pets to their desks, scroll social media and watch videos for hours during working hours, take unapproved extended breaks, and leave early without formal permission. Managers almost never address this slack behavior, framing it as healthy personal freedom and modern workplace flexibility. In stark contrast, employees who arrive punctually, stay focused throughout shifts, complete tasks ahead of deadlines, organize team workflows, or stay a few minutes late to finish critical work are frequently pulled into private HR meetings and formally warned that they are creating unnecessary workplace pressure, fostering involuntary overtime culture, and disrupting the relaxed team atmosphere. This ridiculous unwritten rule creates a stagnant, counterproductive work environment where striving for excellence is considered disruptive while doing the bare minimum is celebrated as balanced professionalism. My long-term coworker Eric embodies this strange workplace survival mindset perfectly. He holds a stable, well-paid office position with no financial stress or job insecurity, yet he practices extreme zero-cost resource hoarding of all public office supplies every single workday. His first morning routine is not checking assignments or replying to urgent emails but scavenging every free communal resource available in the break room and office common areas: disposable cutlery, paper napkins, condiment packets, coffee creamer, tea bags, pens, sticky notes, folders, paper clips, and printer paper. He fills his desk drawers and personal storage bins with these scavenged items weekly, taking massive excess quantities home to fully supply his entire household for free. For nearly a decade, his family has never purchased basic daily consumables or small office supplies because he systematically collects everything from his workplace. Every coworker witnesses this obvious free-riding behavior daily, yet nobody criticizes, intervenes, or reports it. In the twisted logic of local American workplace culture, his parasitic resource hoarding is considered clever practical resource management and harmless personal freedom, while dedicated hard work is labeled stressful and disruptive.